It is Tuesday night, which means it is time for the Fantasy Cheat Sheet here, sponsored by the Going for Two Live Network. Go to the YouTube page, subscribe, like, comment, get our algorithm going. Sorry for the delay. We are here a little bit late, but we're definitely ready for this show. We're going to start this week with our division previews. Every week we're going to talk about a division, AFC and NFC. So this week we are starting with the AFC and the NFC South, just like we always do. But first, we got to talk about some news. And the only news I want to bring up, Scary Terry McLaurin from the Washington Commanders. Boy, did that boy just get paid. 3 years, $71 million, 23 point something average per year. Zach, I'm going to throw it over to you. I forgot to introduce you. I'm so miscombobulated today.
No worries. We're running late. We're saving time.
Yeah, we're saving time.
I'm here every week. I'm on almost every Going for Two show. They should know by now. We're good.
Pretty much. But what do you think about Scary Terry and that contract?
You know, it's so conflicting for me because I have been out on him for the longest time. I have just not been buying any of his stock. And then I see certain things talking about his efficiencies with routes and this and that. You know, if he can live up to his full potential, he's worth every penny. But the concern is Carson Wentz, I don't really still think he's the quarterback that's going to help him shine the way he needs to. But hey, he's a top 5 wide receiver in regards to salary now, and hopefully he can produce like it. Hopefully Wentz can help bring out more than any of the QBs prior. And if not, hey, there's always next year in regards to a lot of big-armed QBs coming into the draft. But McLaurin, he is worth it. I'll say that. I won't make too much judgment until I see him with Wentz.
All right. So I like it because I do like McLaurin. Do I think it was a little much? Yes. But what I actually want to bring up has nothing to do with Scary Terry himself. It has to do with what you said about him being a top 10 paid wide receiver. You know me liking Tyreek Hill, being a Chiefs fan. He gets 30 mil. Devontae gets his money. Everyone's getting paid. You know who I blame for the Scary Terry contract?
Devontae, Tyreek.
Christian freaking Kirk. Because I went and looked today. 8 out of the current 10 top, Christian Kirk got paid bank, and he's not even in the top 10. 8 of the top 10 wide receivers per year on average salary signed their deals after Christian Kirk got his. 8 out of 10. I was shocked. I was surprised. Good for you, Scary Terry. You got your money. You didn't have to leave. Now let's prove that you're quarterback proof, because the one thing I will say is I do agree with Zach. I'm not saying Wentz is going to be horrible, but if Wentz is your quarterback for all 3 years, Washington Commanders, of Scary Terry's new contract, I will be shocked. Period.
And it's concerning from a regard of how much they're paying him. If it doesn't work out where they don't get that QB, you are using a lot of your cap space on one guy. And if you have other holes that you need to address to suddenly be a winning team, it's not a good salary to have. So, you know, they got to see some progression there where he's truly worth it, or else it's going to be a bad contract to have.
I completely agree. So, like I like to say sometimes, let's just get into the meat and potatoes of this discussion we're going to have. So, me and Zach are going to talk about AFC and NFC South. Doesn't matter who it is, what it is, as long as it has to do with those two divisions. That's all we care about. And for the first one, Zach, I know we've talked about him on a couple shows ago just a little bit, but to get more in depth, let's talk about the new quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts, Matt Ryan.
Matty Ice, I love it. I mean, he's had some down years as of late in Atlanta, but I think we're going to see somewhat the old Matt Ryan now. He's got an improved offensive line in Indianapolis. This is a better defense than what he had on his team in Atlanta. You know, the weapons, it's comparable because Ridley was out most of the year, so it's just Pitts. He's got Pittman and then some rookies in Campbell. But this is a run-first offense. It's not about what Matt Ryan does in the passing game. It's how does he manage the game? Does he make those stupid turnovers, those poor decisions with his passing where he's just putting the Colts defense in bad situations where they're suddenly giving up points and they're more vulnerable to lose? I don't think he will. I think Matt Ryan will be good this year. I think he's an undervalued guy in regards to fantasy. I'm really high on what the Colts can be in that relatively bad AFC South Division this year. And yeah, I'm buying all the Matt Ryan stock I can take, especially in a league like the SFB or Scott Fishbowl 12, this scoring format. They value efficiency. And Matt Ryan's going to be efficient there. The volume won't be there, but I don't see him throwing a ton of interceptions. I see it just dink and dump and hand off to JT.
So before we get into my take on Matt Ryan, I just want to bring this up real quick because Jamie, I know we were late. I always have to shout out Jamie now because he is another SFB 12 participant in the number 5 hole. He's in the group chat I'm in, and he's always here. And he just wants to say about the Washington Commanders thing. Hopefully Washington gets Stroud or Young next year. I don't know if they're going to be bad enough to get one of those two, Jamie. But I still don't hold out. I still hold a little hope out for Sam Howell, but that's another subject.
But real quick, before we dive into it, I do want to say it doesn't have to be Stroud or Young. As of right now, with my Devy rankings, I'm projecting 6 to 8 QBs going in round 1 next year. There are plenty of guys. You don't need to be that 101 team in the draft next year where you can get a solid QB.
We'll have to talk about that later.
Oh, I could go on and on about.
Because I personally think you're a little crazy on that.
Ooh.
On the number of QBs.
6 to 8. I think a minimum of 6. I'll say that now.
We'll save that for another episode, Jamie. All right. So to get to my thought on Matt Ryan, I completely 100% agree with you on Matt Ryan on the sense of for Superflex, for Scott Fishbowl with the efficiency that you want, for everyone that's watching that doesn't know about the scoring that we're talking about. If a quarterback is 66% pass completion, that's pretty breaking even because you get positive points for completions, but you also get negative points for incompletions. So if you got a quarterback that's throwing 50%, you're going to be in the hole unless your guy throws 4 touchdowns. I had it last year where I had Joe Burrow in one of his worst games, and let's just say it wasn't pretty. So I do agree with you about Matt Ryan. He's got Michael Pittman. We've talked in depth about Michael Pittman last episode. I still think that it's going to take a little bit for Jelani Woods to get involved because he's a tight end. He's a rookie tight end. That's all we have to say. You got Mo Alley-Cox. The reason I bring Mo Alley-Cox into the discussion is Matt Ryan does love his checkdowns. That's just the way it is. Matt Ryan likes his checkdowns. We all know it. Just like Jamie is saying right here. Ryan has the weapons. I'm a fan of Campbell if he stays healthy. I'm also a fan of Ashton Doolin, plus Hines is a great pass catcher. I don't know. I'm out on Campbell because he can't stay healthy. Ashton Doolin, but the player that I think is going to be more of an impact than those two is Alec Pierce. I think Alec Pierce is going to be that other big body that can go get it. But I would rather have Matt Ryan than a lot of quarterbacks in this league right now when it comes to a super flex league or even a streaming quarterback for 1 QB. What do you think about that?
No, I agree. I mean, yeah, in the super flex formats, I'm content with Matt Ryan as my QB too. I'm not necessarily wanting him as my QB1 in a super flex. That's usually going to represent a pretty weak QB team, and you're going to be vulnerable there. But in a 1 QB format as well, yeah, if you're playing the waivers, especially in redraft, Matt Ryan will be available late. You can get him cheap, and you can stack up at every other position. I'm totally down for that approach. As I like to do it, the 0 QB method. Get that late round guy. And I mean, even when Matt Ryan was good for so many years, that's what he was. He was that late round redraft guy. And I took him year after year, and he treated me so well. Do I think the same volume will be there? No. But the efficiency will be there, and the effectiveness will be. Because JT will help them get in the red zone. I'm confident in that. The defense will help them get in the red zone. And so he just needs one or two of those red zone opportunities each game. Get a touchdown. Hey, cool. He's already better than half the QBs in the league that week. It might not necessarily compete with the big dogs of that week, but that's not what their offense is. You just need a guy. He's a guy that'll help you survive, get by, and rely on your other positions. He won't kill you, but he probably won't win you that many weeks either.
Exactly. But like you said, he's not going to kill you. So let's go on to my first topic of the night, and it is another quarterback, and it is in the same division, and that would be the lovely Ryan Tannehill. So last year, he ended up as the 12th ranked QB. Currently on Fantasy Pros, he's ranked as the 20th quarterback. So that's a big drop from 12 to 20 in 1 year. And this is why I bring this up. I think, like you were on the positive with Matt Ryan. I do like Ryan Tannehill. But the reason I want to bring Ryan Tannehill up is because my mindset is still kind of on dynasty. It always is now. This is the last year I want Tannehill on my roster. Period. I don't think that he is going to be a producer after this year enough, because if you don't get rid of him this year, I don't think you're going to get value for him. That's why I'm saying that. The reason being, part of the reason, A.J. Brown's gone. You got A.J. Brown's gone. Yes, you brought in Treylon Burks, but you don't know. He could be the next A.J. Brown. He could be the next whatever. You never know. But he could also be the next Jalen Reagor. And you don't want that either. I believe that this year, the Tennessee Titans are for sure going to run the ball down people's throats. The reason I bring that up, they were 26th in pace of play last year in the league. And that was with Derrick Henry out a lot of the year, and them using A.J. Brown when he was healthy, them using, passing out of the backfield and passing, I can't even think of how you Westbrook and other random wide receivers to get the ball. There's no way pace of play this year to me is either going to stay the same or get worse, because they're going to have to run the ball with Derrick Henry to be successful. Like you mentioned in your Matt Ryan take, it is kind of a weak division of the AFC South. One of my bold takes last episode was that the Jags could win the division. Do I think the Jags are going to win the division? No. Could it happen? Possibly. And the reason I think it could happen is I think this is the year that the Titans start to slip. I think if the Colts don't win it, that's why I bring up the Jags last time. I just think Matt Ryan, 30th in deep ball completion. People, 30th. That's not good. This was his least efficient year of his career since he's gotten to be the starter in Tennessee. Don't forget, he wasn't even the starter a few years ago. He couldn't even beat out Mariota, who couldn't be a starter last year and is now the starter of the Atlanta Falcons. What's that say? I just think this is the year that he starts to go down the demise. And the other thing is, I think they're going to start playing. They want to start playing a different style of ball, because Derrick Henry's going to be out. Not out, but the cliff for running backs is coming up for Derrick Henry. I do think they're going to give Willis a chance to be a quarterback in a year or so. They're going to want a more mobile quarterback. Tannehill can run the ball, but I want to consider him a running quarterback like a Lamar or anything like that. So for what he's worth right now at 34 years of age and being the 22nd ranked dynasty quarterback on Fantasy Pros, I want him off my team by the end of this year. And if you're going to be a contender, maybe you hold on to him. But if you're going to be a rebuild, sell him to a team that needs him to be that second starter and Superflex. I know that was a little long-winded, but
No, it's tough with Tannehill. I mean, there was a lot of people last year looking at him as someone who could have kind of a breakout year. I mean, the expectations were relatively high, and the hopes were high on what he could be last year, and he underwhelmed. Part of that is even if he's good, it's not going to be sexy in a fantasy production standpoint because you already alluded to it. Well, their pace of play is slow. They they win games, they stay in games because of their time of possession, how they want to hold on to the ball, chew the clock, just dink and dump and slowly move up the field, kill the time. And it's because they're often playing against these Patrick Mahomes, these Joe Burrows, these Justin Herberts, all these great QBs in the AFC, and their only way to truly compete when they don't have one of those elite QBs is to keep the ball out of their hands. And the best way to do that is to just take your time and slowly inch your way up the field. So even if Tannehill was something great, the volume, even more so than Matt Ryan, isn't going to be there. And I agree from a standpoint of moving them past this year, and I know Jamie alluded to the Malik Willis aspect of it. I'm out on both of them. I mean, the 22 QB class was not good, and I think realistically, if this year's bad for the Titans and it's bad for Ryan Tannehill, I wouldn't be surprised to see them be aggressive in next year's draft class as well, like what I was talking about with the Commanders earlier. It's it's not a good situation to be in where you're kind of skeptical about your starter and you don't have a backup you're truly in love with to come in and take the reins. But luckily, next year's draft class should help fill that void. Tannehill, though, I also I did want to mention one thing. The only reason I could see for optimism is the fact that when Robert Woods returns, this would be the best 1-2 punch of receivers he's ever had. But my issue with that is I almost look at it as Robert Woods once he's healthy and Treylon Burks, who's never played in the NFL before. They're a sum of parts to equal what AJ Brown was. Yes, they could be greater than that value down the road, but off the bat, I have a hard time seeing them together being more productive than what AJ Brown was. AJ Brown was such a crucial part, and Treylon Burks could take that void, but we don't know one way or another. So they really just cut away at their receiving core, and it's the same approach that Green Bay had in a way. Obviously, they didn't get a Robert Woods type of guy, but at the same time, they have an Aaron Rodgers. They don't have a Ryan Tannehill, and
Yeah,
that's the big
exactly.
difference here. So, if you got them, awesome QB3 in Superflex, throw them in a bye, or if you have a bye week, or if there's injury, plug them in. Otherwise, if you feel like you don't need them, I would sell them to someone who's desperate because someone will pay more than realistically he's worth to get that QB. And in a one QB format, not a bad backup, but wouldn't be married to keeping him as my backup either if someone's willing to pay a relatively normal price. It doesn't need to be anything sexy in a one QB format.
Exactly. So we talked about a couple wide receivers. Let's talk. Let's go to a different division. Let's go to the NFC South. I know I have some opinions on this one, but before I give you mine, because it is your take, Tyler Algier.
This is the guy where there's potential opportunity. I'm not necessarily confident in that role being there immediately, but Cordero Patterson is someone who had a career year last year who just blew up out of nowhere. We had never really seen him utilized much at all in a fantasy regard, let alone in an NFL regard for consistent volume. And suddenly he's getting this massive volume. It's tough to bet on that repeating, and that's where someone like Tyler Algier comes to mind. That I'm looking at him where, hey, if Cordero suddenly looks washed up and he looks like a 31, 32-year-old running back that just had one freak year, Tyler Algier is the next man up. And I think Mike Davis as well? Or did they get no, they cut him right when
Mike
they
Davis is gone. They
yeah,
have
they cut him
they
the day
got
after they drafted Algier.
they
That's what it
got
was.
what's his name? They got Damian Williams that was on the
Oh,
Chiefs and
that's
on
it.
the Bears. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
I'm not
man.
worried about yeah, so it's either Cordero Patterson looking somewhat like he did last year or Tyler Algier. And guess what? The Falcons defense, it's not great. Their offense isn't great. So I expect plenty of opportunity for him to be on the field, get snaps, get reps. And, I'm expecting Mariota to throw it his way because that offensive line isn't very good. And I don't see Mariota throwing 60-yard bombs down the field. Yeah, I know Kyle Pitts is great, but and I know Drake London as well, but I'm not I'm not seeing it. I think Tyler Algier will feast, and if it's not Cordero, it will be him. And he's a guy that's going late in drafts. So relative to the value, especially in redraft this year, that's more of a sleeper pick that you can get late and have the upside of a potential RB3 where he's in your flex on certain weeks if he's really looking like that their RB1. What are your thoughts on Tyler Algier?
So I'm not saying he ain't no Brees Hall. He's not like a Kenneth Walker. But
No.
where you're getting him, give it to me, baby. I am all in on this. I 100% agree with you. I'm probably actually more in on it than you are. I do think that he'll be the starter by halfway through the season, partly because I'm not sold on Cordell. I do think that he is a little bit of a gimmick guy, and it just worked last year because it just worked and no one thought it was actually going to happen. I mean, going into last year, I know you're new to the community, but going into last year, all I heard on Twitter was Mike Davis, Mike Davis, Mike Davis, Mike Davis. That didn't pan out. So teams are going to be able to, I think, are going to game plan around him a lot more. The defenses in that division are pretty damn good. I mean, New Orleans is a decent D. Carolina's young and getting better. Tampa's still a good D. Their Cordero, I think, is actually also because of Mariota is going to be used a little more in the passing game because they don't have Ridley. I mean, their wide receivers are Drake London, Zacchaeus, and Brian Edwards, who they got to trade from the Las Vegas Raiders. So I do think that Cordero might be used a little more in like the dump off passing. I do think Algier is going to get a little bit of that too. Algier is not a small back. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure.
I do think they're going to end up using him in the goal line too because of that. And I still think there's going to be times where they're both on the field. They can use them as, put freaking Algier in the fullback and hand them off for a 1 yard run or this and that. If those are 2 or 3 touchdowns that you take away from Patterson, just like I talked about last episode about taking some of the carries away from Eckler, if you take a few of those touchdowns away from Patterson, that devalues him. It raises the value of Algier. I love him. Late draft pick in Dynasty, rookie drafts. I'm in on him just like you are.
And one last thing though, when I look at him and I'm thinking about these red zone opportunities, obviously the plan would be to go to Pitt or London. But I look at their offensive line, I look at a lot of it's a stacked O-line and D-line there. Their formations usually. I'm looking at Algier being out there as more of a blocking back, but when their pass blocking breaks down, that line breaks down and Mariota is scrambling and he doesn't see his option open, he's either going to make a poor decision, potentially throw an interception, maybe Pitts or London make a freak play, but the most likely option is, oh, who's that pass blocking running back in my backfield with me that just, creeped his way out 2 yards away and he's in the wide open? Oh, let me dump it to him. And suddenly there's a touchdown. I see opportunities like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be these 80-yard runs where they're doing the stat cast of hitting 25 miles an hour and all this crazy stuff. But the important part is he putting fantasy points up for your team and helping you win? And I believe he will, especially compared to where his ADP is in essentially every format.
Exactly. 100% agreement. So for my next guy, He had 4 touchdowns last year. That's it. Only 4. But he had 4 touchdowns the year before. Only 4, and that's as a wide receiver. He was the 20th ranked wide receiver last year in weeks 1 through 17. The only reason I say weeks 1 through 17 is because that is the fantasy season. He's going as the 16th wide receiver right now in redraft on Fantasy Pros. Who is that guy? That guy would be, come on, Michael, DJ freaking Moore. Why do I say that? Am I delusional? Maybe. But give me all the DJ Moore. I know Sam Darnold might be his quarterback still. Could there be a chance that his quarterback is not Sam Darnold? Yes. Could it be Baker? Yes. Could it be Matt Corral? Yes. Yes, I said it. Matt Corral could be his quarterback partway through the year. But I do think that he is somewhat quarterback proof. I do think he's better than his ADP is going. He was 10th in yards, 11th in receptions, 4th in red zone targets percentage. He's the 4th. This is what actually surprised me. He's 4th most games with 10 plus targets or more since 2019. The only 3 that have more than that than him, some guy named Keenan Allen, some guy named Cooper Kupp. Oh, and some guy that used to dress in green and yellow that is now in black and silver, named Devontae Adams. I think you would agree that those 3 guys are 3 pretty good guys to be in conversation with.
I do agree.
I just think he is being doubted again and again. He had 163 targets last year. Don't sleep on DJ Moore. Don't let him slide past you. I'm not saying to reach up to like a top 10 wide receiver, but go get DJ Moore. I am perfectly okay with DJ Moore as my wide receiver too. And in Dynasty, I want him too because I think he's being slept on, and I think you get him cheaper than you used to be able to because people are doubting him.
And this kind of fits perfectly into what we were talking about pre-show as well, where, I was telling you my ideal strategy for what I want to do in the Scott Fishbowl with my live draft. And guess who, if I'm doing the 2 QBs, 2 running backs, 2 tight ends for my first 6 picks, who the best option sometimes is in that beginning of the 7th? DJ Moore. And I love him as my wide receiver 1. If it's something like that, where say I have Andrews and I have Kittle, I've got Swift, I've got Montgomery, I've got Brady and Rodgers in a redraft, and then I need my wide receivers, but that's the deepest position. Oh, and guess what? I can get this guy who could potentially produce like a top 10 wide receiver based off his volume. Awesome. He's undervalued. A part of what does it is who their quarterbacks are, Sam Darnold or Matt Corral. And I get the concern there. It's not a good team. And CMC, when healthy, is going to get a big workload. But we've seen other guys produce in that receiving game while Christian is there. So I don't want to minimize what DJ is because of Christian. I think that they help each other out. Christian can rest a little bit, hopefully avoid those injuries, and DJ can be out there doing the rest. It's not even what I think. I think we all see it this way. Those are the 2 foundational aspects that offense relies on. It's not the quarterback. It is what can Christian do and what can DJ Moore do. And I think both of them are going to do a lot, and they're both going to get a ridiculous amount of opportunities, targets. You name it, they're getting it. And regardless of what team they're on or what that record of that team is, that's giving you fantasy points.
One more little stat that I forgot that I want to read off because I found it and I was like, ooh, interesting. He had 28.1 team target share. 4th in the league. That's pretty high for someone that finished 20th in scoring. It was Kupp, Adams, and J. Jeff. That's it. They were the only 3 that had more target share than him. To me, that shows that, like you said, I get the whole quarterback situation. Was I in on Darnold coming in As a Jet, no. Did I think Darnold just needed a scenery change? And did I think he was going to do good in Carolina? Yeah. Was I probably wrong? Absolutely. And I'll stand on that and say that I was wrong. I do think that Matt Rule is a good coach. I think he's going to have to prove something this year. And I think because of that, that's part of the reason I do think that he's going to try to get him the ball. Just like you said about CMC. If CMC's eating, that doesn't mean that no one else eats. He helps other people out because of him eating. And I do think that CMC is going to eat this year, which, we'll get to a little bit. So that's just the way it is. So for your next topic, and I was actually going to bring this one up too until I saw you put it on the show sheet, so I'm happy you brought it up. Somebody is missing a certain Rob Gronkowski down in Tampa Bay. Tom Brady is sad because Rob Gronkowski is gone. But don't fret, because Cameron Breit is here.
Undervalued. That's all I can say. I mean, what else needs to be said? Gronk is gone. Obviously, he could just be having a nice long summer party tour, and then he shows up right at the end of preseason saying, "Hey, I'm ready to go again." I mean, he wouldn't be the first old guy on that team to say, "Actually, I don't want to retire." So, we're fairly used to that. But I think Gronk's actually done, and if that's the case, Cameron Breit is the one that's going to get the opportunity. And a big part of this aspect as well is that you have to consider Godwin's hurt right now. Russell Gage, I expect to take some of that workload, but also someone like Cameron Breit. And even when all the wide receivers were healthy, you look at when they had Evans, Godwin, and Brown plus Gronk. Gronk was still getting volume and plenty of opportunities, plenty of touchdowns, targets in the red zone. And I agree with good old boys. I love Russell Gage. Gage is a great value in essentially every format. But Cameron Breit, he's fallen way, way further because, people are still uncertain. And yeah, Cade Otten as well, but we don't know. And I think Cameron Breit, he's been in that system. He has some chemistry. He can block as well. And I think what's important there is if you can also block, you're on the field more. And if an audible is called, if a shift happens and whatever the play was, if you can block and then suddenly it turns into a pass, he can be out there and he can get potential opportunities there as well. And I'm just really excited about what Cameron Breit could be. I'm not saying he's going to be a top 10 tight end necessarily or a top 5, anything crazy, but relative to where he's being drafted, he's falling very late in any format where you could probably, if it's a redraft, say benches are fairly minimal, he could be a waiver guy even. And at that point, that's the waiver guy I want. If I need a backup tight end, I need to fill a void of an injury. Cameron Breit is the name I'm going for.
All right, so I'm going to give my quick take on it, and then I'm going to go through some of the chat. I do like Cameron Breit. I actually like Cameron Breit a lot. I'm not 100% sold that Gronk doesn't come back still. I know he says he's not, but hold that out. Let's just assume that it's 100% sure that he's not coming back. Cameron Breit is one of those guys that I would love on my team if I'm deciding to punt the tight end position. Even in Scott Fishbowl, I would take him if I'm deciding to punt that position and just load up on 2 or 3 guys, and he would be one of them for sure. To get to a couple of the comments about tight ends, Jamie's asking, I know you mentioned it, but I just want to bring it up because of what good old boy said after. Jamie's asking about Cade Otten at tight end. 100% I do like Cade Otten, but not this year, Jamie, for the exact reason that Derrick brings up. Usually it takes 3 years to develop their game. I think Cade could be something maybe lower end in year 2. As an example, one of Zach's favorite tight ends to talk about is going into his 3rd year, and that's Cole Kmet. It's going to do that for sure. I do also agree with, I know you brought it up too, but Derrick, I love you, man, and you were right on this one. Russell Gage is a value in this offense. I completely agree. I personally think that he could end up being the number 2 for the whole year because of the Godwin situation. And last but not least, Breit will give you a week and is a TD dependent tight end. Yeah, he is TD dependent, but I would definitely take it.
Yeah, I like Breit, and I mean, I'm glad it's not the NFC North, AFC North week because, if it was, I would just put Cole Kmet for every single one of, or no, I would alternate between Cole Kmet, Christian Watson for every topic for myself.
I'm going to make a rule that you can't talk about Christian Watson.
Hey, I mean, I did a PLP last night, and one of the teams I was assigned to was Christian Watson. I just danced right around it. I knew we only had limited time, and I was like, I'm just going to say his name and keep on moving because otherwise it turns into a 2-hour love fest about how he's going to be one of the best in the league in a couple of years. But I mean, I'll just leave it at that.
All right. So for my next topic, throwing an audible in here. For my next topic, I'm bringing up the Houston Texans. Not the running back position, not the tight end position. Do I like Davis Mills more than others? Yes. But this wide receiving core is one of the more undervalued wide receiving core in fantasy, I believe, partly because Brandon Cooks. He has to be one of the most underrated wide receivers in the league. Always is. 4 teams. I mean, he played for the Saints. He's played for the Rams. He's played for the Patriots. Now he's playing for the Houston Texans. Unfortunately, people thought he was going to, go to Houston and just ponder off. And I know he had a concussion last year. I believe that Brandon Cooks is a value. I would love him on my team. Like you mentioned about the DJ Moore situation for SFB, if you had to take him, I don't know if I would want, Cooks as my WR1. But if I was playing a running back wide receiver or running back tight end heavy strategy, if I'm going bully tight end and I can grab Cooks as my number 1 or 2, I would take it all day long. But don't forget, they drafted John Mechie, who I think is going to stretch the field a little bit and give Cooks a little more room. But the other one that I want to bring up, because I was in on him hardcore, and Derrick from Good Old Boys knows this, give me Nico freaking Collins. Yes, he was from Michigan. We all know what John Harbaugh does to freaking wide receiver prospects. He ruins them almost. Comes in. He doesn't do much last year. He's that big, but the thing is, besides Brevin Jordan, he's the only big-bodied wide receiver, pass-catching guy that Houston has. He could be a red zone target. He can be just that sideline guy. Give me Collins. Give me all those guys. Just like Good Old Boy said, Collins has sneaky value. I'm in on Collins. I'm in on Cooks. Mechie, I think, is going to help those two out more than be a success this year because he is a rookie in redraft. I did draft him in a dynasty league or two. I don't mind him on my team there, but for this year and this year only, give me the other 2. But for dynasty, give me all 3 because I do think Davis Mills has a chance to plant himself. And if he doesn't plant himself, the Texans are going to do what you mentioned about Washington and go after another QB. What do you think?
I love a lot of their weapons. I'm still low on the Texans. I think we all are in regards to what they are as a whole for an entire roster right now. But Nico, I've been a big fan of. Brandon Cooks, he's undervalued as well. Brevin Jordan is another kind of sleeper tight end guy that's young that I'm monitoring. I had high hopes for him coming out of the draft. I mean, that's the same way I felt for Nico, and I'm still optimistic. I think John Mechie will get opportunity with time. I know they really loved him, but I don't necessarily see it this year. I look at Brandon Cooks, and I look at Nico, and maybe some Brevin Jordan. Or Pharaoh Brown, but I'm not in on Pharaoh. So if Pharaoh starts stealing snaps, like Good Old Boys just mentioned, it's going to really cut into Brevin Jordan's opportunity. But I did want to touch on one thing as well with Nico Collins. And I know I keep bringing up the Scott Fishbowl stuff. I can't help it. I'm sorry. I've been creating all these threads and ADPs and the drafts this weekend for me. So just keep thinking about it. But one guy that really stood out to me when I was creating the ADP from all these mocks that we did on the Going for Two Discord. By the way, go join that if you aren't already. It's always a good time. We have a lot of mocks. But Nico Collins, he was average draft position 212, which put him at a rank of 223. And if he's a 223rd guy, there is a lot of room for upside, even if it's just a redraft like this. But hey, you can easily thrive if he's a 223rd guy. I promise you, compared to the other wide receivers available, the floor should be higher, but the potential ceiling is going to be much higher as well because he already has that chemistry with Davis Mills. I don't really know what to think of Davis Mills yet, but they have chemistry, and you can only assume that it's going to get better in year two.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to change it up a little bit because it's just the two of us, and we're at 40 minutes, so we have a little bit of time. Quick topics, just to get both of our quick opinion on. What do you think about Jameis Winston and what he can do being the quarterback of the Saints?
Lots of touchdowns, lots of passing yards, lots of interceptions. You name it, every passing category, he will just tally it up. I mean, I love him in certain formats. Scott Fishbowl, it scares me a little bit more because those -4 INTs, the incompletions, if you're below that 66.6% completion percentage, it'll hurt. And he's a guy I don't necessarily expect to be super consistently efficient. And yeah, I like it better than Simeon last year or Drew Brees. It's an upgrade there. I think it'll help. I mean, they have Olave, Landry, and we'll see if MT is healthy now. But if Michael Thomas is healthy and they plug those two in and Jameis is slinging it like he did in Tampa, they can put up some points and they can be winning that division. I mean, it's funny, the AFC South and the NFC South, neither are really that strong. And if you can sling the rock, put up big points, it's going to be tough for a lot of those other teams to do that as well. And you'll find yourself in the playoffs. Do I think they'll make it far? If that's the case? No. But hey, making it's half the battle.
Yeah, I mean, I agree about what he'll do. I mean, he's going to get you points, but like you said, he'll get you the negatives because of interceptions. He'll try to do something goofy, run around, get smacked, get hit, get clobbered. The MT thing still scares me. I'm not sold that he's going to be back to be the MT. I do like the Landry pickup, bringing him back home for a couple years. I love the Olave pick. I do wish that Troutman would come up and just be the tight end that some people thought he would be. But, I mean, basically, I am more worried about the team in general than I am about Jameis because with Sean Payton being gone, and I'll get into that a little bit in a minute about something else, I'm more worried about that than I am Winston himself. The other topic I want to bring up real quick before we get into the cheat of the week, because I know we talked about it before the show and in the chat that you wanted to bring it up, and then let's go to good old boy's comment real quick because we're still on the subject. The New Orleans offense is designed to throw the ball short to long, whereas the Tampa Bay offense was designed to throw the ball long to short. The wide receivers they put in this offense is a short to long throw. He'll be okay. I agree with you, Derrick. That's why I do like the Landry pickup.
He'll be okay, but I think he's also one of those guys that is known to put too much power on certain passes at the intermediate routes or throwing an inaccurate pass that just goes right into the hands of the defender. The volume will be there, and I agree exactly with what he's saying, but Jameis isn't necessarily known for his precision either.
Yeah, for sure. So we talked about this in the chat. You were going to bring it up, and then we decided not to. So let's talk a little bit about the Jacksonville Jaguars real quick before we get into our cheat of the week. What do you think about Trevor Lawrence? Let's talk about two guys specifically. Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne. Go ahead.
Love one, don't know how to feel about the other. I love me some Travis Etienne. He is being undervalued in regards to where he ranks among running backs, and I want all of it. Give me redraft, dynasty, I don't care, I want it. And when he's potentially what I'm thinking might be RB5, RB6 on the year by the end of 2022, him being in the RB20 range is going to look silly. And especially in a dynasty format, people are really going to regret his price and his value being at that point. But, Travis is going to be good. And he's got chemistry with the other guy. We watched him dominate in college, and I'm excited to see if it can translate at the NFL level. Trevor Lawrence, on the other hand, I think what bums me out is I really had higher hopes for a rookie year. I refuse to make a final assessment on a QB prior to their third year because we need to see that progression. Rookie years, it's tough to judge anyway. I mean, shit, look at Peyton Manning. He had an awful rookie year. I know that's the one everyone refers to. Obviously, Justin Herbert had a great rookie year. But for the most part, these guys don't look that great. They're trying to learn the offenses. They're trying to adapt to the game at the NFL level, the speed at that level. And year two, it's about taking those strides in the right direction, putting the pieces together slowly. And year three is when it starts to really click. Look at Josh Allen. Year two, you could see the cogs were kind of kicking into gear. Okay, we're getting somewhere. And then year three, it's like, whoa. And obviously they brought Stephon Diggs in, but, even if they brought Stephon Diggs in the year prior, you weren't expecting that. So Trevor Lawrence, if you have him, if you took him as a rookie in Dynasty, recommend holding on to him. You don't want to sell him at his current price because it's going to be lower than what you'd probably want to, and I wouldn't give up on him quite yet. I think you also have to credit there's a new head coach. There's new weapons with DJ Shark. And they still have Marvin Jones. They still have LaVisca. Etienne's back and healthy. They have Evan Ingram in now. They're improving all these other positions. They're still not going to be the most competitive team, but yeah, I'm not going to give up on him yet. For redraft, if he's available later than he probably I'm not against taking him in redraft, but I'm probably not going to take him as aggressively as some people are. And then Scott Fishbowl, I'm not willing to risk it unless he's my QB3. I broke enough numbers there. Him and Zach Wilson, they both lost 62.5 points just off of passing efficiency last year. No, thank you.
So I'm not even going to talk about Trevor Lawrence because I agree with you. I did have hopes, but the only thing I will say about the Trevor situation is he is in such a better position with the coaching staff not being named Urban Meyer that hopefully Doug Peterson can do something with him. Doug Peterson has done stuff with people before. I mean, Nick Foles won a Super Bowl with him. I mean, that's a feat in its own self. And I know I'm beating a dead horse when I say this, but before I beat the dead horse about something else, when I beat the dead horse, good old boys, Derrick, James Robinson is coming off an Achilles. Don't see him being as much of a factor. I do agree with you. I will bring this up, Derrick, just for you. Christian Kirk as the WR1, that scares me. Do I think Christian Kirk's all right? Yeah. But when it comes to beating a dead horse, give me Travis Etienne. Give me all the Etienne. Derrick, I know, has been drafting him. I know Jamie's been drafting him. I know you've been drafting him. I know you've been wanting him. I want this to work for Travis. He deserves it. Yes, he got hurt last year. I know people were high on him going into the draft or going into the offseason. Let's see if he does that. And I 100% agree with Jamie on this one This guy is another guy I would take late in Scott Fishbowl, and I'm talking late if I was punting the position, and that's normally Stonehands Evan Ingram. For some reason, I have been drafting him really late in mocks, like rounds 21, 20, just to see if I'm going to be out on him or not. So before we end the show, we're going to get to the cheat of the week. So both of us we're going to do this a little bit quicker, but just because it's the cheat of the week and it's the end of the show, both of us have a topic. Honestly, Zach doesn't really know what mine is because I just put a position in the thing because I was going to see what else happened with the show. But we cannot go without talking about one of the best running backs in the past however many years. Zach, talk about your boy.
I love him. I mean, it's been a rough couple of years. I traded for him at the highest point in a couple of dynasty leagues, and it's hurt. But I'm optimistic that the return is here. Christian McCaffrey, he's been seeking advice from all these former running backs, all these legendary running backs, trying to say, hey, what can I do differently with my training, with my recovery, where I'm not experiencing these small injuries that pile up that prevent me from longer periods of time. I love him. The only counter to Christian McCaffrey is he gets hurt. You can't argue about any other aspect of it. If you're talking about winning football games, maybe, but that's more so an organizational thing and, lack of guys at other positions. But in fantasy, the dude just produces. He produces every single time he's out there. I think since I believe it was since his rookie year or so, year 2 on, he only had I believe it was 6 games where he scored under 10 points. And yeah, it doesn't sound that you're like under 10, like that's like, but it was only 8 times where it was under 15. And you look at most running backs, there's a few of those snuck in each year. Obviously he's been hurt, but when that dude is out there, he's going to give you points. He's going to give you a ton of points, and I want him. And if I can get him in Dynasty for any cheaper because, hey, they're concerned about his injury history, they're concerned about him getting a little older, give it to me. Redraft, a little bit more concerned because I'm already seeing him go right back to where he belongs. But I think it'll be worth it for the people that are willing to pull the trigger there.
I hope and think he's going to be back. He is CMC for a reason. Like you said, the only way I think he doesn't have a good year is if he's injured. And I'm going to stop saying that because I don't want to jinx anything. So that's really all we need to say about that because short and sweet, and you pretty much said everything that needed to be said. So what I want to talk about, we've talked about the team with the quarterback, and I brought up that I wanted to bring it up a little bit later, and that is the New Orleans Saints. I want to talk about their running back room. The reason being, I think it needs to be brought up in the sense of Kamara has come out and said that Kamara's camp has come out and said they think a suspension's coming. There's rumors that it could be a 6 game. I also saw something the other day that said minimum 4. So I think it's going to be a 4 to 6. Do I think they could give them a 6 and then appeal it down to a 4? Possibly. 6 games of a 17-game schedule is a big chunk for a guy of Kamara's value and any running back to be out. One of the guys I know, Fade Duchesne's, he brought up that he thinks that Kamara could still end up being a top 12 running back with a 6-game suspension. It's not out of the realm. I mean, low end top 12, yeah. But what I'm more concerned about, and he was too, is the coaching staff, the new coach without Sean Payton. Can they do it without Sean Payton? Because Sean Payton was the genius that got Kamara the ball when Taysom Hill was the quarterback, when Winston was the quarterback, he did better with Winston. But is it going to be the same offense? Probably not completely. Can they do it? But the other thing I want to bring up is that is 6 games of production lost by Kamara, which means someone's got to, maybe they're not going to produce as good as Kamara, but someone's got to do something. That guy could be a UDFA. Abram Smith could be the next James Robinson in the sense of, I'm not saying like come out and be the number one back of his team and demolish and start next year as the number one guy and supplant Kamara. James Robinson was in a different kind of situation. But Abram Smith could get enough run because Mark Ingram is an old man. Okay? And then they got Divine Ezigbo. I can't even say his name right half the time. And that's when I'm sober. So I think Abram Smith, if and when Kamara does get suspended, Abram Smith could be that guy to fill that role with Mark Ingram or with one of the other guys. But if Mark Ingram does stuff or produces, I don't think he's going to be able to produce at the clip that he used to because of his age, which gives a young guy like Abram Smith the chance to fulfill a role. But don't sell Kamara low just because he's going to miss 6 games. He's still going to be something.
I agree. I mean, my only concern with Kamara is the aspect of what you're paying to get him.
Yep.
And what round you take him in, what kind of running backs you have around him. Obviously, if you have Abram Smith and he's the guy, not really too much of a concern then. But, I'm so concerned if I'm taking Kamara as my RB1 or my RB2 because I was aggressive on other positions early in a draft, and then I have to sit and wait for, say it's 6 weeks, and I have David Montgomery as my RB1, and then my RB2 is, say it's Cordero Patterson or like a Tony Pollard, and they can be productive guys this year, but those aren't guys that I'm thrilled about by any means as my RB2. And obviously once Kamara comes back, that's a big upgrade. I mean, that's an upgrade over most running backs anyway, but it's going to be tough to manage in between. So if you can get him as your RB3 where you got 2 guys that you're feeling solid with, they might not be to the same production level as Kamara when he's back, but you can get him as just kind of the additive, that extra little spicy toy on your bench that, oh yeah, I forgot he's there. He's been suspended. Whoops. Oh, let me just throw him into the lineup week 7 and oh shit, there's 30 fantasy points. Yeah. I love him in that role. Like, oh yeah, you thought my team was good before and I was 5-1 or something during a suspension, and then suddenly I'm feeling like I'm just going to win the league. Awesome. But there's a gamble. Especially with this time of year, you want to be careful because, I mean, same thing I alluded to before with that ADP. I mean, Kamara, he was going fairly early. I mean, not as early as you would think for what his upside would be, but he was 36. His ADP was 36. Or yeah, he was a 36th guy taken out of those 20 mocks. And for me, I do not like him there because guess what? If I have to wait and I could have got a DeAndre Swift, I could have got a Travis Etienne, and I took Kamara and I have to sit and wait those 6 weeks, I might be halfway to being out of that satellite opportunity.
Yep. I'll let someone else take him.
Yep. But it'll treat him well late in the year.
Oh, for sure. So that is the show. Before we leave, Zach, do you have anything you want to say, promote, whatever you want to do? Just go for it.
Mike, thanks for having me. It's always fun being here with you every other Tuesday. You can find me around all over Going for Two for different shows. I mean, I'm bouncing around every other Tuesday here on the Fantasy Cheat Sheet, every other Monday with Gladys and Jay for the 2-point conversion, 2.5-point conversion. It's kind of like 2.5 men where I'm the half. But other than that, you can find me on Twitter at the Big Pulowski. I'm working on some threads for position breakdowns to help you identify the changes in the Scott Fish Bowl and understanding where the differences in the scoring like where the differences need to be valued, especially with the quarterback position. People look at the efficiency, kind of minimize it to a regard, or they really bank on the rushing first down bonuses. But yeah, I've got threads on Twitter for that. It's my pinned one at the Big Plowski, and then also on goingfor2.com. I have a Scott Fishbowl ADP up from 20 mocks. So if you want that as a resource to help you hopefully win, go check it out. And thanks again for having me, Mike.
Oh, you're a co-host. That's all it's all about. You can find me at Drop the Mic FF on Twitter. Trying to do some more graphic stuff. If you have any thoughts or comments, hit me up and Drop the Mic FF. I need ideas for more stuff. You can find me. I haven't written in a while. I keep saying that, but you can find me on Going for Two every Tuesday, like Zach said. You can also find me usually every Friday night over at the Rum Boys Fantasy Network on the YouTube channel. But before you let us go and stop watching us, make sure you go like, subscribe, and comment on this show that we're doing tonight. For Zach, I'm Mike. Peace out.